Hi everyone, I'm Alexis Moore, and this is my major applied research project for Education 548. My emerging technological trends that I have chosen is virtual and remote laboratories. To begin, I want to give a quick overview of what I will be discussing throughout this presentation. My introduction will include a description of virtual and remote labs, how they're implemented in classrooms, and why they matter. Then I will show a video of a virtual laboratory on geology and rock samples. I will then go on to discuss some other common forms of these labs that teachers use in their classroom today. I will then proceed to discuss some pros and cons to using these labs. Then lastly, I will wrap up my presentation with a conclusion statement. To begin my introduction, I want to give you all a better understanding of what virtual and remote laboratories are. Both virtual and remote labs are a growing trend in education today, as they provide students with an accessible and flexible approach to their learning. A virtual lab provides interactive stimulations where students perform experiments, collect data, and answer questions to assess their understanding of material. Virtual labs typically use animations, illustrations, and videos to display important information and to better engage students with their learning. As you can see from the picture below, this is an example of a chemistry virtual lab. It closely resembles a real-world lab, though is based solely on technology. Remote labs make use of telecommunications to conduct real experiments, different than virtual experiments. The experiment takes place at the location of the operating technology, while the scientist is using technology from a different geographical location, as you can see in the picture above. Now, let's discuss how they are used in the classroom and why they matter. When used in education, virtual and remote labs both reduce the time spent on experiments, allowing for more experiments to be implemented in the lesson. Teachers also use these labs for repeated instruction on a topic, as they give students the opportunity for repeated practice because they are able to repeat the labs numerous times and reference back to it if needed. When used correctly, these labs also engage and encourage students and guide them through learning by presenting them with numerous steps or procedures to follow along the way. Lastly, these labs allow students to interact with one another through software and allow students to share innovative and creative ideas or skills. Here are some common examples of these labs that are implemented. The following video is an example of a geology virtual lab on rock sampling that is commonly seen in science classrooms. As you can see from the video example, the student is able to label different rock layers, then use the magnifying glass to search for samples in each of the layers. When found, the student is able to use the pickaxe to take a sample from that rock and store it into their container. The goal of this lab is to collect all the rock samples and give them to the scientist in the car. Labs like this allow students to take control of an experiment and allows the students to use problem-solving skills to reach the end, or to find the solution. The following lists are other common labs implemented in classrooms. The first is Whole Frog Project, which is an interactive dissection of a frog. Another common lab is Learn Genetics, which offers virtual and interactive laboratories where students can learn and practice basic biological techniques such as DNA extraction. Lastly, Molecular Workbench is a virtual lab that includes hundreds of simulations in areas such as physics, chemistry, biology, and biotechnology. Even though these labs are a growing trend in education today, there are a few cons that come along with them. To begin, whenever there is an implementation of technology, there always runs a risk of technical difficulties occurring. When a technical difficulty arises, this slows down the experimental process and can cause a delay in students' learning. Altogether, the virtual and remote labs do not replace real labs, they simply enhance them, meaning teachers should not rely only on these labs for experimentation. Another con is teachers' inability to control the level of difficulty of these labs. Teachers find them online, and the difficulty levels are usually already set forth, making it impossible for them to increase or decrease the level. Lastly, before implementing these labs, students must learn how to manipulate the equipment. This instruction can take a long duration of time, which decreases the amount of time students have to complete the actual experiment. Although there are drawbacks to using virtual or remote labs, the advantages far outweigh them. The following are benefits that come along with implementing these labs into education. First and foremost, these labs are convenient for both teachers and students. Teachers are able to assign these labs for both classwork and/or homework, as all students need to complete them is a technology device. Also, when teachers are limited in resources or space, they are able to implement these labs to provide their students with the experience necessary. And for students, they are able to complete these labs at their own convenience and when or where they learn best, allowing for more of a differentiated learning technique. Another benefit is students can receive instant feedback, which allows them to redesign or rethink their experiment and try it again. Because of resources or time, many real-life experiments are unable to be repeated, though virtual ones can be referenced repeatedly for clarification or practice. Another pro of virtual and remote labs is the top-notch equipment that comes along with them. When schools use virtual or remote labs, they have access to top-grade equipment when it comes to experimentation. Companies that make these labs are constantly competing with one another to stay up to date with the current technology, meaning schools do not have to deal with outdated equipment. When using these labs, there is a large decrease in money spent on experiments in the classroom. Because of the easy ability to share resources, schools are able to purchase less equipment, leading to a decrease in overall money spent. Also, the resources needed for virtual labs are far less than the cost of equipment for real-life laboratories. Lastly, virtual labs do not possess the same fire, electrical, radiation, and biological hazards that a standard lab does. Students are able to engage in the same experiments without risking these dangers, which will make teachers more likely to implement them within their classrooms on a regular basis. In conclusion, although there are some cons to using these labs in education, there are also numerous benefits as they can be used as an enhancement for both regular instruction and hands-on experiments. They are an engaging and interactive way for students to receive immediate feedback on their progress with the material and make any adjustments necessary to their learning. Virtual and remote labs are an emerging trend in technology in education today and are very beneficial for our students. Thank you for listening to my presentation, and I hope that you implement these labs into your own classroom. I have attached my references below for you to explore this trend as well.